profit.
It's raining reforms these days, and there's hope building up that in the midst of all this reform rush, food security will also get its due. Whether it's an overhaul of the public distribution system or ensuring that the food security bill gets passed, there is clear optimism now building up that the government will pay attention to these critical areas. Hello and welcome to this very, very special panel discussion as we try to find collaborative solutions. Well, Kohli, and let me introduce our special guest that we have on the panel, a fantastic panel, the who's who with regard to food security with us here. We've got Dr. Peter Irwin Kenmore, FAO representative right here. Also Dr. Rajiv Vaidya, President South Asia DuPont. Mr. Balwinder Kumar, Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, the government, Mr. Salil Singhal, Co-Chairman of the CRI National Council on Agriculture and also the Chairman and Managing Director of PI Industries, or Mr. P. Chengal Reddy, Secretary General of the Consortium of Indian Farmers Alliance. Thank you all for being with us on this very, very pertinent and important issue of food security. Let me kick off the discussion by actually trying to understand the various dimensions of food security and whether India's policy makers actually understand it and are they giving adequate attention to it. Dr. Rajiv Vaidya, your first opening thoughts really on whether we are addressing all dimensions of food security in India or not, whether it comes to availability, affordability as well as quality.
So I think when it comes to food security, given the complex situation in India, I really like to think of what we need to do in three simple terms. How can we grow more food with a limited amount of resources? How can we waste less between the farm and the kitchen? And how can we eat better? How can we improve the protein content of the Indian diet, the micronutrient content of the Indian diet? So I think it's these three simple ideas addressed holistically that add up to food security.
Mr. Balwinder, do we see the food security bill in its present form addressing some of these issues that Dr. Vaidya has raised?
Yeah, as we know, this food security bill is currently pending before the Indian Parliament. And it is going to address the issue of food security to a very great extent. Indian population is divided into two, one priority sector, another is general, and the priority sector would be 75%, minimum 75% population in the rural area and 50% in the urban areas. And this priority sector population for the families would be given 7 kg of food grain at a very, very cheap rate. That is 3 rupees, 2 rupees and 1 rupees in respect of rice, wheat and coarse cereals. I think to a great extent it is going to address the problem of food security if this is passed in the present form.
At the same time, Mr. Singhal, there are enough voices who believe that the food security bill in its present form does not really address the challenge of providing food for all in the country. Do we think there's need for now the private sector to really step in? Why is it that we're always expecting the government to step in and do everything when it comes to critical issues that are really facing the country?
Well, I don't think the private sector can take the responsibility of providing food at a particular price to a particular section of society. However, the private sector has an enormous role to play in ensuring higher productivity, the best possible and most competitive transportation systems, and delivery to the right people. And we at CI have always believed that there is now time for having the private sector step in right from the working at the farmers level to even procurement in competition, if I dare say, with the Food Corporation of India and in competition with the public distribution system, which will bring about transparency and which will help to bring the quality and the better value to the consumers.
Mr. Balwinder Kumar, a quick question really which clearly perplexes everyone right now. The fact that India claims right now that we have excess food grain production. At the same time, there are millions who are going hungry. How do you explain this paradox? And what really explains the fact that we just simply cannot find solutions to storage of food grain in the country?
The main problem is in the PDS system, that is a public distribution system. We have not been able to improve delivery system under the PDS. We have not been able to distribute food grains to the needy people or those who live below the poverty line. Since this issue is very complex and the government is seized with the matter, and now transparency, computerization, many things now the government is undertaking. All states have been told to digitize their ration card, and as well as to address many other concerns concerning PDS.
But Dr. Peter Kenmore, clearly we do need solutions coming by way of technology to address some of those issues, like overhauling India's creaky public distribution system, really. Share with us some of the global experiences and what India can really gain from those global experiences when it comes to addressing issues like food security, like ensuring that we can revamp the public distribution system.
One of the pace-setting examples must be in Brazil, which is again a fellow BRIC country,
right,
along with India. And there the zero hunger strategy has elements of making sure that each household does have the resources to get a hold of it, and they do cash transfers as well as other kinds of transfer systems. That's one. Strengthening family farming, which is what we call smallholders here, so that family farmers are able to get a price that improves their household income so they can also be a consumer of the food. Connecting better the technology and the national research system in Brazil, Embrapa, is a strong one. It's certainly comparable to ICR, but having a better connection one way or another between that system and farmers so that you've got quicker and better and competitive access to new technical ideas.
All right, we'll have to wait and see whether that model does get implemented or not. But Mr. Chengal Reddy, are we seeing that agriculture is getting its rightful due in India?
No. You see, in the last, since 1991, it's very visible that the service and industrial sectors were totally liberated. They were incentivized. They got the best technologies, investments, and free markets. But if you see on the farm sector, all these three are on the negative side. There were restrictions on the farm sector, both in terms of technologies even today. Look at one of the fundamentals of Indian in the last 20 years. If you see vegetables, we have become 200 million. And earlier, of course, rice and wheat, we were the best. Then in the last 10 years, we have become #1 in the world because of biotechnology, BT cotton.
Right.
Then in BT maize, of course not BT, but hybrid maize, we have become #1. But then the problem with government of India, in the state governments, is they are not further allowing the technologies. And second aspect that we found that the governments, I'm not saying state, central or this and that, the investments that is required for the farm sector, whether it's irrigation, electricity, research, technology transfer, processing, is hardly coming through. It's only, of course, it's only in the last week that the Prime Minister has initiated this FDI, which we are all very happy. In fact,
so you think it's something that will actually
and
help farmers?
Lastly, I must confess
right,
that if you want farm sector to grow, we should have liberal policies. The point is very simple. How can Indian agriculture and industry grow at 8%? I mean, industry and service grow at 8-9%. What are the factors? Why is that agriculture is not going even at 1%? These are the issues, and I am happy, be late than never, our Prime Minister has accepted, and Professor Abhijit Sen says that probably 12th plan is going to be the plan of farmers. We are all looking for that.
All right, we really do hope so. But you did mention FDI in multi-brand retail, and there has been a raging political controversy as to whether it's actually going to benefit the farming community or not. A quick word from you on that.
I must, with due apologies, my Delhi-based medias and activists tell you that you don't understand agriculture. Let me tell you, all those who have been saying that FDA is bad, GMOs is bad. The agriculture, there is no culture in agriculture. I just want everybody to understand that in modern India, agriculture is not a culture. Agriculture is technology-based, investment-oriented, market-driven, managed by a knowledge farmer worker. Today, Indian farming, today even India's small farming across many parts of India is viable, sustainable, profitable. Very interestingly, I will share with all of you, if you have one cow which gives 8 liters milk, in that family in any part of India there is no suicide, there is no migration, there is no malnutrition. But the greatest achievement has come in vegetables, 200 million tons. You know, in the last 7-8 years of inflation, the inflation is not in cereals, but it is in vegetables, it is in meat and milk. Now here again, of course, various serious efforts are being made. Milk productivity is going up, meat productivity is going up, and we do look forward to a very, very, good thing. It's good that this particular index has come, because this index has clearly says nutrition, which in our own farmers' perspective, why is that there is no malnutrition amongst certain sections of farmers like Punjab or some parts of the country? Why is that there is no malnutrition under certain sections who have certain peculiar food habits? The question here requires is, it's good that the government the focus is coming on the farm sector, and we do hope that...
So a short answer to at least FDI and multi-brand retailers, it's good for the farm sector?
Not multi-brand, ma'am. You don't say multi-brand. You start using a word called free markets. Use it, make it much more appropriate. Don't compartmentalize. You say FDI, somebody says electricity, somebody says GMOs. Don't say that. If farm sector has to grow, it has to be multi-dimensional approach in which all of them should be inclusive.
Dr. Vaidya, this will clearly be music to the ears of the UPA government, coming at a time when we've seen the kind of political opposition there is, and obviously the bogey being used by specific political parties is obviously that it will adversely impact the farming community. But you just heard Mr. Chengal Reddy's very, very liberal views. Do you think there's a need to really overhaul the thinking that's there right now within policy making, and also why the stepmotherly treatment, as he's saying, to the farm sector?
So I think we talked about the 3 issues. How can we grow more food? How can we waste less between the farm and the kitchen? And how can we eat better? And certainly FDI and anything that improves the efficiency by which food moves from the farm to the kitchen helps the problem in a huge way. I think there are science-powered solutions that can come in versus any one of these 3 problems. But for those science-powered solutions to work, for the potential of that science to be unleashed, I think the thinking needs to change around 3 ideas. We first of all need collaboration. I think this problem is simply too big for any one entity to address by itself. So your governments, NGOs, academia, farming communities, consumers working together collaboratively is how we get to answers. The second idea is that science has to become local. So the principles may be universal, but what is food in Punjab is very different from what is food in Kerala. And so I think what works in one state in India may not work in another. So we've got to get science to the point where the solutions are local and relevant. And the last part is, if science remains in labs, or if science remains in institutions, then it is not very useful. Science has to get in the hands of the practitioners, the users, that actually make a difference.
Dr. Kenmore, is this mere wishful thinking? Does it all sound very good, or is it something that can be implemented, especially for a country like India that is known to be a technology superpower? Why is it that our agricultural sector is not embracing technology in the manner it should?
It's certainly crucial to have farmers educated and to have science in the hands of farmers.
Right.
That's not simply consuming a science-based product. It's about making science-based decisions. It's things about diagnostics, so farmers better understand what's happening in their field, not just planting, come back 3 months later, try to harvest what's there, but monitoring what's happening week to week, day to day. The variation takes place on a very local scale, 10 meters, 100 meters, not on a month-by-month basis, but on a week-to-week, often day-to-day basis. And by having the right kind of decision-making support with farmers, some of which, of course, is going to be supported well with mobile phones and smartphones and all of the kind of ICT, and some of it's going to be supported by better connection to local-based, and agree completely. It's got to be local, but it's not just about the states. It's local to the district, it's local to the block, it's local to the mandals. That's where the science has to be available so that you get better demand-driven science. You get science that's responding to local production conditions, local market challenges, local weather changes.
Right, Mr. Singhal, you have a point to make.
I very strongly would like to make a statement here. Indian farmers adopt science, they lap it up if they see the benefit.
Right.
The major challenge that India faces today is the regulatory norms which is preventing the introduction of the latest techniques and technologies for the benefit of Indian farmers.
So, Mr. Kumar, respond to that.
Let me just give you 3 examples.
Go ahead, complete your
You look
point.
at approvals for new seeds.
Right.
You look at the mess that the government and the politicians have made of GMO. You look at the registration processes for a new fertilizer combination or the registration of new pesticides. There are not even enough people in the regulatory system to handle this. We are so unclear about our IPR issues, which prevent a lot of good technologies to come into India.
Very
We
true.
need to look at these issues, take these very seriously and understand that we need to put the right people with right skills, with a clear focus to deliver on the regulatory requirement. The law says the registration will be granted in 12 months. Does it happen 3 years? These need to be delivered.
Mr. Chengal Reddy, what will be that game changer for the Indian agricultural sector? What is it that one big thing? The second green revolution is something that we keep talking about, but that one big game changer that we're all waiting for.
You see, if you look at the urban people, I mean city people, Delhi people or anybody, you want a computer introduced in America next day. You want a Samsung mobile to be introduced next day. You want your medical to be introduced next day. You want your food to be introduced next day. Industry, you want chemicals, you want cars, you want automobiles, you want aeroplanes. But when it comes to agriculture, everybody or most of it, people, the so-called elite, and they, of course not, I won't call everybody, you have some nuisance people here, they oppose agriculture. What for? In GMOs, I am asking government of India a very simple question. I have been writing to a lot of political leaders. Do you know Indians, there are about 3 million Indians in America? For 300 million Americans, there are 3 million Indians in America. And every year, about 6 lakhs people, that is 0.6 million Indians goes to abroad, including our VIPs, administrators, academicians, of course our industrialists, they often go. When you go there, what is that you have been eating? What is that you eat? Mr. Singhal was there other day. What is that he has eaten? It is GMO food. But then when it comes to India, political and other systems, they have lots and lots of doubts. It is simple because we farmers have no voice. We don't know how to do the trade testing here.
But isn't it that your voice is actually being taken over by the political class that claims to be your voice?
Not only political class. You look at this, I mean, I don't want to call a national party. The chaps, when they were in the ruling, they want FDI, 100%, they passed resolution. When they came to opposition, they opposed.
And they say they don't want this for the sake of farmers.
Some very progressive chief ministers, some extraordinary states, when they want FDI, they want industries to come. When it comes to agriculture, they oppose. And of course, you have a half a dozen, thanks to your Delhi, I don't know, your South End Delhi NGOs, they are a bloody nuisance to our farmers. They claim to represent farmers. I am ready. In fact, I have been offering for last 6-7 years. I said, look, any of you NGOs, I will give you 10 hectares land from Punjab to Kerala. Please come and show me agriculture.
So at least you can convince all those states who are right now opposing FDI and retail in the name of the farming community to say that yes, we wholeheartedly welcome it because it will bring better access to technology. It will give you better price for your produce.
The problem with Indian farmers is 90% illiterate, small, and they don't understand. But of course, some of us are trying to convince the farmers. We don't know the rules and regulations. We don't know the policies. We don't know what is international markets. We don't know what your consumer preferences are. You see, look at a small farm and we are divided into 20, 30 languages. We just can't understand. But remember one thing, as Mr. Singhal said, look at in the last 40, 50 years, when in 1960 government of India brought the Chinese Taichung native rice, we adopted it. When Dr. Norman Borlaug gave wheat, we adopted. Fertilizer we adopted. Pesticide we have adopted. And hybrids we have adopted. Even BT technology we have adopted. We are successful. We never failed. Tomorrow if some technology comes, believe me, in India you have what you call an extraordinary rippling system. You know, in every India village, there are 90% small farmers, only 10 slightly bigger farmers. When a new seed comes like a tomato or anything, first 2-3 farmers adopt it. If it is successful, from 2 it goes to 20 next year, and third year it is 100%. That's all.
Okay, so now coming back to the narrow focus of collaborative. Sure, Mr. Singhal, go ahead.
GMO.
Go ahead.
300 million Americans have been consuming GMO foods for the last 17 years. America has an extensive system of health checks by the Center for Disease Control. It's an extremely active body who's completely entrusted with the responsibility of health checks of citizens across ages, types, and regions. I think there is something to learn from there.
Okay, so I'm not getting into the entire controversy and debate with regard to...
one small issue.
Sure, quickly.
I have returned to the Speaker Lok Sabha that in future, no politician from India should be sent to America because he has to eat GMO food. Please don't go. Similarly, I'm asking all our great policy makers, please don't go to China. You have to eat GMO food.
Okay, so we are getting back to the issue of food security because this debate is about food security and we should not focus entirely on the controversy with regard to genetically modified crops and whether or not India should embrace it or not.
No,
but
please due respects, remember the entire development of agriculture was technology. Don't call it GMO or hybrids. It is technology. Today in India, 60% is rain-fed crop and we lose 1 lakh of crops because of pests and diseases. It is technology. I am not calling GMO or XYZ. What I am trying to emphasize is not that I am propagating anything. Sure. We say basically it is technology which is driving the entire food
production.
production.
At least one consensus here, and which is that the Indian farming community is welcoming technology, is willing to embrace technology. We need to look at regulatory issues to ensure that at least when it comes to embracing technology, we see that focus coming back. But Dr. Kenmore, we know that the world is now better fed than what it was, say, 50 years ago. Can we say that for India safely, and how do we ensure that we can, going forward, at least ensure that yes, our population does not go hungry, that our population gets the right amount of nutrients, and that food security will not just remain a challenge for India, but something that it's actually being able to achieve?
Wait, compared to 50 years ago, on the averages, certainly India has more food and more food's going in. At the same time, as most of the speakers so far this afternoon have said, beginning with just the introduction itself from Mr. Singhal, is that the level of undernutrition, particularly of Indian children at 40-something%, is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
So that's the question. Are things changed? Are they better than 50 years ago? Undoubtedly, life expectancy, other things.
But malnutrition is an issue.
Undernutrition, especially malnutrition in general, undernutrition specifically of children, is an unacceptable fact and something that has to become a very big political priority, and it means top to bottom.
All right, Dr. Vaidya, is there a concern that when it comes to the Indian policymakers, we are focusing a bit too much on the quantity, the availability, but the quality is something that's not getting adequate attention?
Well, certainly, if you look at the Indian diet, protein content of Indian diet, micronutrient content of Indian diet needs attention. And if you look at the total food grain production in India, and you look at the starches part of it, rice, wheat, etc., and compare it to the protein part of it, there is a certain amount of demand that exceeds supply on the protein side, and that's why we're importing pulses, milk powder, and so on and so forth. And so I think driving more of an agenda on total nutrition rather than just starch-based food grain supply is critical. I think beyond just those supply issues, your Professor Sen talked about outcomes versus inputs.
Right.
And there is some important work to be done around education and getting that technology in the hands of the people where it matters. And so if you think about knowledge around nutrition and knowledge around the first 1,000 days, as we've and what are the things that help a child during the first 1,000 days, the spread of that kind of knowledge is also a critical part of the overall policy work that needs to go on.
Mr. Balwinder Kumar, when we talk about food availability, there's obviously the food security bill that is waiting to be passed by Parliament, but there are political compulsions that any government has, clearly. The affordability factor, how much food can the government really afford to distribute to the poor? The whole concept of whether you should do it only to the population that's below the poverty line per se being a very controversial line here. Explain really to people why politically it's almost impossible for a government like India to commit to universal food security.
Yeah, because this is the problem, that how much which we should commit, government should commit to provide to the poor people or the priority people. First of all, there is a dispute that what percentage constitute the priority area. So we say that 75% in urban area and 50% up to the 75% rural and 50% urban area, they should be provided with cheaper food grade. That is at the rate of rupees 3 rupees, 2 rupees and 1 rupees, that is rice, wheat and coarse cereals.
Right.
And to the non-priority people or general category, they should be, the rate would be 50% of the MSP. So the gap is very huge. So now, and then the second thing is how much we should supply to each family. Now the proposal which is under consideration of the government, of the Parliament, is that 7 kg per family per month should be provided to the priority. So since these issues are very ticklish, implications are very huge, delivery system one has to see. So there are many issues, and for additional, under present form, if food security bill is implemented as such, there would be a requirement of nearly 20 million tons of food grains.
So is availability an issue, or is it the cost factor, the fact that it will run up a huge subsidy bill, a huge food subsidy bill? Which of the two is a bigger one?
Both the issues.
Equally.
Subsidy issue is involved because there is a huge financial implication, and the second is the delivery, our mechanism to deliver food grains up to the last level. Infrastructure problem.
Mr. Singhal, can we look at the government finding adequate solutions? We keep talking about various solutions, but when we actually see the food security bill being implemented, are we going to see the last mile issue really remaining one of the big deterrents?
See, I am completely foxed by this idea, the way we have run the economy of this country. We are subsidizing just about everything, but not in. Should we be subsidizing food or working with the people to not let them remain poor and give them the ability to be able to buy the food that they should?
You're against food subsidy?
What I'm saying is the entire economics of running this country. I mean, there has been a great saying in the past, teach a man to fish rather than give him a fish. What we are doing by all this is giving him a fish, but we are not teaching him how to fish. There has to be a major change. From the subsidy-run economy, it has to go into investment-based economy. And if investment will go, it will make the whole system sustainable. How long will we be able to sustain Narega? How long will we be able to sustain food subsidies? How long will we be able to subsidize fertilizers? Fertilizer, power, fuel, kerosene, water, electricity, everything is subsidized. And the government is completely, I mean, it's going around the bend.
Views that we hear. On one hand, you've got activists saying that we want universal food security, and on the other hand, you've got this view coming from corporate India saying that it's clearly something which is not sustainable.
The problem is not so simple as he is saying, and the solution is not so simple.
Right.
we are living in a democratic system. Under democratic system, the policies are formulated on the basis of consensus. And if we see the poverty, if we see the diversity, if we see the reach of government infrastructure up to the last level, there are huge problems. 83% farmers are of category of small and marginal farmers. They don't have anything.
Right.
60% agriculture is rain fed.
Right.
How can we supply fertilizer without subsidy?
Right.
At present, the rate of DAP, now the government has reduced subsidy on phosphatic and potassium fertilizer, and the rate is 25,000 rupees per metric ton compared to the urea, which is 5,300. How can a poor farmer, small and marginal farmer, afford this? So this subsidy has to be continued till we reach to a level where people can afford or farmers can afford inputs at the market price.
My suggestion to government, we have been writing for quite some time, is the government overemphasis on only wheat and rice. If you see, the protein content is very limited. In fact, we have been demanding and requesting to add minor millets, jawar, bajra and all that, which for over centuries sustained our farmers in the most difficult areas. Now what I am trying to tell you is, here are some policy deficiencies. Critically in the backward, in the drought prone areas, there is excellent scope for producing minor millets and then be used by the so-called local community, number one. Secondly, in regard to nutrition, look at banana. How many poor people eat banana every day? It is available. It is there in the village. How many poor people eat egg, which is just 2.5 rupees? It is there. The problem is, we have not been able to sensitize, educate, make our poor people understand what exactly is this nutrition. Do you know, if you have a sprouted beans, you have no problem. You take everyday jaggery, it is there.
So Dr. Vaidya, are we going to see that really as a big gap which has a huge potential of being fulfilled? The fact that there is a need to find such solutions to address the challenges and the needs that are there, consumption patterns that need to be changed, sowing patterns that need to be changed, crop patterns that need to be changed.
Yes, certainly. So I think your technology has a very big role to play. I'll just give you some examples of technology. Right from the agricultural inputs that a farmer uses to produce the maximum amount of food on that hectare of land, to technology solutions that are in the supply chain between the farm and the kitchen, to technology solutions that the food company uses to create more nutritious foods that are relevant in the Indian ethnic context, so on and so forth. So the entire supply chain, the entire spectrum can be helped by technology. But for that technology to really work, we've got to have a number of things that we've talked about. We've got to have the right collaborative policy frameworks. We've got to have the right local flavor to the technology, so it's relevant. We've got to have the education so that people understand what that technology is and how that technology is relevant to their lives and how it can really work. So I think that entire spectrum, along with just the technology solution, is what collectively works to create the solution.
A quick comment before I start inviting questions.
My reaction to this nutritional part is, we go back 10 years and we look today, I think there is a dramatic change. The rising middle class is quite conscious of nutritious needs. That number is now 300 million. I remember as a child, an apple was the only thing available to my grandfather because he was not well. It was not available and it was expensive.
Right.
Today, you can get apple in India round the clock at very cheap rates. And there is a lot of consciousness. So what I'm trying to say, the media, and because of its reach, the discussions on health issues that are put on the agendas of these media go round the country. There is a sense of consciousness that is developing, and we can see change in the production of meat, eggs, milk, and of course fruits and vegetables.
All right, there's clearly a need for both.
And albeit slowly, but we are getting there. And I am very, very optimistic about this. That doesn't bother me so much.
All right, let me now invite some questions from the audience. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Great discussion, and special thanks to the panel members for sharing your views. It's been stimulating. My question has to do with a particular element of the Food Security Index, and that is public investment in agricultural research. We haven't heard a lot from the panel yet. It's an area that India scored fairly low on. Actually, as we watched globally over the last decade, public investment in agricultural research has languished. And I'd be particularly interested in any of the panel members' views on maybe three aspects of that. One is why is it so low, and what's it going to take for us to stimulate that if we believe it would be positive? The second thing would be if you picked an area that you thought would have the most impact around food security here in India, what would it be? Where should we focus? And then how can we actually stimulate action?
Who would like to take that answer? Mr. Reddy?
Let me explain. You were asking about the investments in agriculture. No, my country is making almost 3,000 crores, and there are about 200 research institutions. It is not that we are not making efforts. My governments and states and our universities, our scientists have done extraordinary job, and they are continue to do. In the recent years, even the private sector is coming in a big way. But let me tell you, today agriculture is no longer a routine traditional agriculture. It is a frontier technologies. Today if you went for a molecules, whatever it is, whether chemical or be here and there, the investments are very high. This is where if you closely observe across the globe, the technologies in frontier science, whether it is a rocket science or nuclear science or some of them, it is done by private sector, even in a country like America. Now why is it? Because the investments are high, the risks are high, no doubt this thing. So I would personally feel, look at my government, the money we have spent on subsidies to farmers, the subsidies to poor people, assisting the children, it is extraordinary. But I won't call it the less agriculture. I mean, investments in agriculture research is limited. My suggestion as a farmer is, there is no need for India to go on investing in agriculture. Today in medical science, I am getting from Germany, Switzerland and America all the best medical technologies. Why should we again restart or reinvent the wheel?
Mr. Singh,
as a farmer, I do not accept.
Would you agree with that view, really?
Right.
I think the big challenge for Indian agriculture research is that it is not at all commercially oriented, both in terms of its focus and both in terms of considering this to be an important aspect of funding the research activity. If I compare this to what happened to the CSIR, the Science Laboratory Research, in the leadership there completely changed that. The scientists got rewarded by royalties. The business of working with companies was made commercially viable, and suddenly our application for patents have gone up there. I think there is a need to revamp Indian agriculture to give it a commercial orientation. That's the bad news.
Okay.
The good news is the work is on. And I'm very pleased to say that I'm sure we will get there.
All right, next question.
Inspired by Rajiv's construct of grow more, waste less and eat better. The fourth leg of this argument that I wish to talk about is pipeline management. Any industry looks at production and sales and works its inventory and manages it in a certain manner. We're going to soon see a situation, given the bumper crops that we've been having, of stocks rising beyond the minimum support prices, which is subsidy by another name. The actual prices on the ground last year, February, were 20% below MSP levels. Cotton prices were 50% below MSP levels. But the government refused to act in managing the pipeline, in letting some export caps happen and so on. And grain prices were excellent. Cotton prices were brilliant. So what I'm appealing for, sir, and this is to you, Mr. Kumar, what is the government doing for pipeline management? And the second observation, including a question that I have, I actually wish to compliment the government on this one. After many, many years, we've seen poverty alleviation as becoming distinct from farm economics. Finally, some policies are beginning to happen. And what I'd like to see, if you're coming up to the 12th plan, what I'd like to see is policy aimed at the small farm and machines being available in a taxi model to the farm sector. You yourself headed up a meeting the other day, and I wish to compliment you on that. My question there would be, are we going to move very, very quickly on that one?
Mr. Kumar, again.
Yeah, as Professor Abhijit Sen has pointed out that in 12th five-year plan, this is the priority to organize farmers to form farmer producer organization, FPOs, and to take care of many problems which the small farmers are facing as on date. Government is also contemplating custom hiring schemes for mechanization, because small farmers, they cannot afford many agricultural implements because they are costly and the economies of scale is not there. So the government is giving emphasis, and in 12th five-year plan, this will be the priority area, that is the custom hiring for mechanization and formation of FPOs.
Mr. Reddy, we've had questions around the whole issue of prices and food inflation, and that's something we did not touch upon in the discussion. A quick comment from you on the entire issue of whether the kind of high inflation that we've been seeing is actually benefiting farmers.
Yes, the point is which Abhijit Sen and our departments are now working. How do you develop producer groups? How do you enable them to make their own marketing system? Here comes, even though FDI, I don't think they bring miracles, but one fundamental factor happens in India in the next 2, 3, 5 years is when the large-scale retails comes in of introducing technologies, whether it is cold storage, transportation. Second, they have to enter into long-term contract with the producer groups because they need to have. So these changes, policy changes, which will bring about the change. I mean, we are asking, as I told you, we please remove our shackles. As I told you, liberate us, we will be happy to take care and live on our own.
Let me add a comment here of a recent government policy announcement, which I think is brilliant. If any company, corporate is willing to put 10,000 farmers together and taking from the farming and buy off his produce, they would share half the costs of all this development for a period of 5 to 10 years. 33 corporates have already signed in. Now this is the kind of PPP model that we need to see evolve. And what the government has done is two very interesting things. All the money that was going in subsidy, one way or the other, will now get channelized through the private sector, and you will be unshackling the regulations of buying and selling and straightening the whole things out. So to answer his question, you take the government out of the system.
One last question. We can get the mic to the gentleman.
We can't. We need governments.
Okay, there's just one more question. We'll try to take both. If we can have crisp answers to all the questions.
My name's Graham Brooks. I'm a UK-based agricultural economist. I'd like to make a comment that somebody on the panel might want to come back on, and I'd like to pick up on the points that Mr. Reddy was making about science. India greatly improved its food security through the use of science in the Green Revolution. And I think if you are going to move yourself up the food security index, you need to embrace technology. India cannot afford to not embrace technology. In other words, what I'm saying is, I see worrying signs that because your regulatory regime is not being based on science, you are copying the European Union. The European Union has got itself in an awful muddle on the impact of using new technology. And I don't just mean GMOs. You cannot afford to do that in Europe, in India. And I would hope that policymakers in India can see that.
Okay, so I hope you're not repeating that mistake. Dr. Vaidya, I'd like you to take that.
So I think, clearly science-based regulation that, focuses on impact to the consumer, is transparent, and that is actually consistent over time, because these investments take time to actually mature and produce fruit. So I think that kind of a regime that welcomes new science will certainly accelerate the rate at which new science can come to solve these problems in this system.
Dr. Kenmore, would you like to add to that?
I mean, I think that there's again, as the Secretary said earlier, it's a complex issue that shouldn't be oversimplified. There are productivity gains even in European agriculture, even in European fields. And the yields per hectare are going up. It's not, you can't write off the whole system.
Right.
I think that, but having science that is done in India and that is shared with farmers, and having farmers have a better and stronger role in doing that science, in determining what that science is being applied at, and basically getting scientists more out in the field and less in the lab. I'm sorry, but that's something that other countries are doing better at.
Much better than
And I think that it's not a question of what scientists are doing in the lab in isolation. There has to be a better response by the science community in India to local variation as it's being affected by things like climate change. I mean, if that doesn't happen, and there are examples, Krita is doing a great job, but overall, there has to be a better job of getting them into the field.
I think you've perfectly summed up what really we've discussed in this very, very pertinent discussion. I'm sorry we've clearly run out of time, but there are clearly no easy answers to providing collaborative solutions for achieving food security in India. At least an effort is being made with sensitizing all the stakeholders. Policymakers are aware of the challenges, but it will have to be clearly a collaborative effort forward. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your views. And with that, it's a wrap here on this very special discussion. Thanks for watching.